Human sees alien girl hiding a glowing egg, but human learns the creature inside knows him. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's return to our main character. The storm rolled over the abandoned outpost like a living thing, hissing across metal roofs and shaking loose old antenna panels. Ethan Cole braced himself against the doorway as a pulse of blue ion light flashed across the sky, turning the empty settlement into a field of ghostly silhouettes. His helmet display flickered, static crawling along the edges. He muttered under his breath, adjusting one of the frayed cables on the power module, trying to coax one more hour of life from a system that probably should have been retired 20 years ago. That was when he saw it. A faint glow slipping between the rocks beyond the fence line, like someone cupping a lantern beneath their hands. The outpost had been deserted for years. Nothing should have been moving out there. Ethan stepped off the cracked platform, boots crunching against the dry gravel. The cold bit through his jacket, sharper than he expected, and he pulled his collar higher as another gust whipped through the yard. He wasn't a soldier. Not anymore. Just a field engineer trying to keep a dying relay station from collapsing on itself. But something about that glow, soft, rhythmic, pulled at him. He followed it toward a narrow maintenance corridor carved between two storage bays. The air there felt warmer somehow, stirred by a quiet hum he couldn't place. Then he froze. Someone was already in the shadows. Small, hunched, protective. The glow wasn't loose at all, it was held. Ethan's eyes adjusted, and the outline sharpened. A girl, her skin tinted a deep blue that seemed to catch and bend the faintest traces of ion light. She held something close to her chest, wrapped in her arms. The light leaked softly through her fingers. She noticed him the same moment he noticed her. Her breath hitched, and she pressed the glowing shape tighter too. Her body, as if shielding it from him. Ethan lifted both hands slowly, palms open. "Hey," he said gently, voice steady in the humming silence. "I'm not here to take anything." The girl backed up a single step, bare feet silent on the metal flooring. Her eyes were bright, silver catching the glow from what she held. The wind moaned through the corridor, and dust curled between them. Up close, Ethan could feel it now. The glow wasn't just light. It pulsed, soft and warm, like a tiny heartbeat echoing through the cold. She shifted her weight, unsure, frightened, as if she expected him to sound an alarm. Ethan didn't move, didn't raise his voice, didn't demand answers. He only nodded toward the object she guarded so fiercely. "Whatever that is," he whispered. "I'm guessing it matters to you." Her fingers tightened. The glow responded with a trembling flicker. And something in her expression, fear, hope, a quiet plea, told Ethan that the storm outside wasn't the only thing pressing against her tonight. The girl's grip eased just a fraction as the ion wind softened outside, leaving only the quiet hum of old machinery filling the narrow corridor. Ethan kept his hands up, open, letting the silence settle the way he would calm a skittish animal back home. Her eyes flicked toward the service hatch behind her, as if she was deciding whether to bolt or stay. The glow in her arms pulsed again, warming the cold air in slow waves. Ethan felt it against his skin, gentle and steady like a heartbeat through fabric. "You are hurt," she said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan blinked, confused for a moment, until he followed her gaze to his forearm. A thin line of red dust coated it, a scratch he had not even realized he got while squeezing through the fence. "It is nothing," he said, "just the wind scraping metal." She studied him carefully, like she was searching his face for something she could trust. Then the glow flickered again, brighter this time, and she pressed the object closer as if trying to quiet it. "Is it alive?" Ethan asked softly. Her breath caught. She hesitated, then gave a tiny nod. A distant rumble shook the outpost. The wind carried another burst of ion energy, rattling a loose panel above them. Dust rained down in a soft cascade. Ethan instinctively stepped forward, not to crowd her, but to place himself between her and the unstable metal beams swaying overhead. She flinched at first, then stilled when she realized he was shielding her. He did not say anything, and she did not thank him, but the quiet moment between them shifted slightly, like a door creaking open. After a long beat, she angled her chin toward the service bay behind her. "This place is unsafe," she said. "The storm will get worse." Ethan nodded. He knew it would. The forecast had warned of an ion surge strong enough to fry every unshielded circuit for miles, and the temperature had already dropped lower than his outpost gear was rated for. "There is a backup shelter on the west side," he said carefully. "Thick walls. Stable heat. You and—" he gestured gently to the glowing object. "Whatever you are carrying, you could wait it out there." Her silver eyes narrowed. She tightened her hold on the oval shape, its light spreading across her forearms like liquid blue fire. She did not speak, but the question in her expression was clear. "Why help me?" Ethan let out a slow breath. "Because you look like you need it," he said simply. "And because I would not want to freeze out here either." The girl's shoulders rose and fell with a cautious breath. A soft gust whisked her hair across her face, strands shimmering in the faint glow. She shifted her weight, then took one quiet step toward him. The light in her arms pulsed again, responding as if it sensed the change. Ethan felt the warmth intensify, brushing his chest like a gentle exhale. "My name is Ethan," he said, keeping his voice steady. "Ethan Cole." She hesitated, clutching the glowing egg-shaped bundle, and after a moment she whispered, "Naira." The name floated in the cold air like a fragile promise. Before Ethan could say another word, the glow brightened unexpectedly, casting swirling patterns across the metal walls. Naira gasped softly and lowered her gaze to the object. "It reacts to you," she murmured, her voice trembling with something he could not interpret. "It should not do that." Ethan stared at the shifting light, feeling a strange warmth blooming through his chest. "Maybe it is just curious," he offered. But Naira did not look convinced. Instead, she took another slow step toward him, her expression tense and uncertain. "No," she whispered. "It recognizes you." The word hung between them like frost suspended in the air, delicate and impossible to ignore. "Recognizes." Ethan felt the weight of it press against his chest, although the glow in Naira's arms remained soft and steady, as if the tiny pulse inside was trying to speak in a language neither of them fully understood. A low tremor rolled through the outpost, not strong enough to threaten the structure, but enough to rattle a loose conduit above them. Naira stepped instinctively closer, not out of trust, but because the shaking startled the glowing shape. The light fluttered, warming their faces with a gentle wave. Ethan kept his focus on her, on the fear and calculation shifting subtly across her features. "You said it recognizes me," he said quietly. "How would that even be possible? I have never seen anything like it." Naira swallowed, her eyes dropping to the glowing surface now resting against her forearm. "These are auralite eggs," she whispered. "They form bonds through memory echoes. They sense patterns, sounds, and emotional imprints near them during gestation." Ethan tried to make sense of that, but she continued before he could ask anything more. "But you are human. You should be nothing more than background noise to it." Her fingers traced the curve of the shell, careful and reverent. "Yet it responds to you, as if it knows your presence already." Ethan felt an unfamiliar heaviness in his throat. The egg pulsed again, and a whisper of warmth crept along his palm even though he had not touched it. Naira watched him, almost studying the reaction like a scientist catching an unexpected result. The storm outside groaned against the metal siding, pushing a cold draft through the corridor. Ethan rubbed his hands together out of instinct and nodded toward the west shelter. "We should move," he said softly. "Whatever is happening, this is not the place to figure it out." Naira hesitated, her silver eyes reflecting the swirling blue glow. Her breathing stilled for a moment. Then she gave the smallest nod. She allowed Ethan to lead the way, but she stayed close, just a half step behind him, her movements protective and alert. The air thickened with the metallic tang of ion dust as they crossed the open yard toward the west shelter. Each gust carried a faint hum, almost musical, like the storm was brushing invisible strings stretched across the sky. "How far is it?" she asked, her voice quiet to keep from startling the egg. "About 100 yards, Ethan replied. "Behind the old container stacks." The path was uneven, cluttered with old parts and panels that had been stripped for salvage years ago. Naira navigated the debris silently, her steps light despite the cold metal under her feet. The glow in her arms illuminated their way, throwing gentle arcs of blue light across his jacket. The temperature continued to drop, stinging Ethan's cheeks and making his breath turn white in the air. Naira noticed and shifted the egg slightly, allowing a ripple of warmth to drift toward him. He blinked, surprised by the comfort of it, and Naira looked away quickly as if embarrassed by the small act. When they reached the shelter hatch, Ethan brushed off a layer of dust and forced the manual release handle to turn. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the dim but steady heat radiating from the older generator inside. Naira stepped in first, positioning herself where the warmth met the cold draft. Ethan sealed the door behind them, leaving the storm outside to rage against the metal. In the quiet of the shelter, the glow brightened once more, soft enough to cast shadows along the curved walls. Naira held her breath, watching the egg closely. "It is listening again," she murmured. Ethan felt the same gentle warmth reach for him. He exhaled slowly. "Then maybe," he said, voice low, "it will finally tell us why." Inside the shelter, the generator's low hum created a gentle vibration under the floor, steady and warm like a heartbeat etched into steel. Ethan stepped farther in, brushing dust from his sleeves while Naira positioned herself near the center of the room. The glowing egg cradled against her arms brightened, as if sensing the stable environment. Its light cast soft arcs along the curved metal, turning the small space into a quiet dome of blue. Ethan lowered his backpack to the floor and knelt beside a service panel, checking the temperature gauge. "It should hold steady around 70 degrees, he said. "Warm enough for you," and his eyes drifted to the glowing shape. Naira watched him with cautious attention, her expression tight but softening around the edges. "It responds to environments the same way I do," she said quietly. "Warmth, calm air, steady frequencies. It feels safer here." Ethan nodded, absorbing her words. For a moment, there was only the hum of the generator and the faint, rhythmic pulse of the egg. Then Naira shifted her weight slightly, adjusting the bundle in her arms. "You asked how it could recognize you," she said, her voice low and steady. "I did not want to answer until we reached safety." She hesitated, her fingers gliding protectively along the translucent shell. "Oralite embryos store sensory impressions," she explained. "Not memories, not exactly. More like emotional echoes left behind by anything they sense repeatedly during early development. Familiar sounds, familiar warmth." Ethan leaned back against a supply crate, letting the gentle heat ease the cold still locked in his jacket. "I do not see how that could connect to me," he said. "I have never been anywhere near your people." Naira's gaze drifted up, meeting his with an uncertainty that seemed to tug at the quiet space between them. "Have you ever been near an oralite shard?" Ethan blinked. "A shard?" She nodded. "Fragments of our energy stones. Sometimes they drift through space after storms or collisions. They carry the same resonance the embryos respond to." Ethan looked down, feeling the truth press close in his chest. "When I was younger," he said slowly, "my brother and I found something near a mining site. It looked like a piece of glass, glowing faintly. I kept it in my room for months." Naira inhaled sharply. Her arms tightened around the egg, not in fear, but in revelation. "That would be enough," she whispered. "If the shard carried a resonance strong enough, and if the embryo sensed that echo during its early cycle, it could imprint on it. It could imprint on you." Ethan felt the room tilt slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of connection forming in front of him. Naira studied the egg, her eyes glowing faintly in the reflected light. "It recognized something familiar in you because that shard once lived near your presence." Ethan exhaled, letting the warmth settle deeper into his bones. The idea was strange, but it felt oddly comforting, like a thread tying two distant points together through time. The generator hummed steadily, making the air vibrate in soft waves. Naira shifted closer, kneeling beside him without fully realizing it. The egg pulsed again, brighter now, warming the space between them. "It is calm with you here," she said softly. "It has never been this calm." Ethan watched the light ripple across the shell, gentle as a sleeping breath. "Then we keep it that way," he murmured. "At least until the storm passes." Naira held the egg a little differently then, as if sharing its weight with him, the glow painting both of their faces with the same quiet, tinder light. The shelter's warmth settled into a gentle rhythm, the generator's steady vibration blending with the soft pulse of the glowing egg. Ethan rested his back against the curved wall, feeling the metal slowly lose its chill as the heat spread. Naira sat a short distance away, her posture still alert even in the relative calm. She kept the egg close, her fingers tracing faint patterns along its surface, each touch lighting new trails of soft blue. For a while, neither of them spoke. The storm outside muffled itself into a distant hum, more like wind brushing across sand than the roar that had chased them into hiding. Ethan found himself watching Naira, not out of suspicion, but curiosity. The way the light played across her deep blue skin made the room feel smaller, quieter, almost like they were drifting inside a lantern. She broke the silence first. "You said you kept the shard in your room." He nodded. "On my nightstand. It glowed at night. My brother always joked it looked like it wanted to breathe." Naira looked down at the egg, her voice softening. "Auralite shards do hold echoes. They absorb emotional traces, especially from places people sleep or rest. It makes sense the embryo would respond to something like that." Ethan rubbed his palms together, letting the warmth ease the tightness in his fingers. The shard eventually faded, stopped glowing after a while. "I thought it was just a mineral reacting to air." Naira shook her head gently. It did not fade. It released everything it absorbed, and the embryo heard it. The simplicity of her words made his breath slow. He stared at the egg, still pulsing like a tiny star. "So this little one knows echoes of my life," he murmured. Naira hesitated before answering. "It may know comfort, warmth, a voice you used often, even the rhythm of your breathing when you were calm." Ethan felt an unexpected tightness in his chest, not painful, just deep. The egg pulsed again, and its warmth drifted toward him like a quiet recognition. Naira's gaze softened at the sight. "It has chosen you," she said quietly. Ethan swallowed. "Chosen me for what?" She shifted, pulling her knees slightly closer as if bracing herself against the next words. "Auralite young are drawn to what they perceive as safety, familiarity, but imprinting this early means it expects you to stay near it until it hatches." Ethan blinked slowly. "How soon?" "Not long," she whispered. "Not with pulses this strong." The room fell quiet again, but not empty. Something unspoken threaded between them, as delicate as a wire carrying low current. The generator hummed. The egg glowed. Naira adjusted her grip, and Ethan noticed how tired she looked, how long she must have been carrying it through the storm and across the outpost. He reached for his pack and pulled out a folded emergency blanket. "You should rest," he said gently. "You have been carrying it for a long time. I can hold it for a moment if you want." Naira's eyes widened slightly, not in fear, but in surprise. She looked at the egg, then at Ethan, studying the steadiness in his expression. The glow brightened as if answering for her. Slowly, with the same care one might use to hand off something irreplaceable, she lifted the egg toward him. The warmth reached his palms before the shell did, a soft wave of recognition that made his breath hitch. When the weight finally settled in his hands, the light shifted, swirling gently like dawn behind clouds. Naira exhaled, a quiet sound of relief and uncertainty. "It trusts you," she said. Ethan held the egg against the warmth of his chest, feeling its tiny pulse steady itself to match his own. "Then I will not let it fall." The egg's warmth settled into Ethan's palms like a living whisper, a steady rhythm that softened the metallic hum of the shelter around them. He held it close to his chest, careful and deliberate, feeling the gentle pulse sync with his heartbeat as if it were listening, matching, learning him. Naira watched with a quiet intensity, her deep blue eyes reflecting the soft glow now radiating through Ethan's fingers. She looked smaller without the egg in her arms, not physically but in the way someone looks when a long-carried weight is finally set down. Her shoulders eased, but her hands hovered near, unsure of their purpose without the familiar shape to protect. Ethan adjusted his grip, steadying the egg as another warm wave spread across his chest. "It is lighter than it looks," he murmured. Naira nodded slowly. "It responds to balance. It shifts its density to match the one holding it." Ethan smiled faintly. "Smart little thing." The egg pulsed again, brighter this time, lighting the small shelter like a lantern. Naira tensed, not in fear, but in awareness. "It is communicating," she whispered. "Not with words. With resonance. It feels what you feel. Ethan swallowed, sensing the truth in her voice. A calm warmth pressed gently against him, almost like a small hand resting on his chest. Naira shifted closer, leaning slightly against the wall beside him, the generator's low hum brushing her hair with a soft vibration. I have carried it since the moment it was created, she said quietly. But now it is choosing. Imprinting. Ethan glanced at her, noting how the glow painted gentle trails along her cheekbones. How does that work? The choosing part. Naira traced her fingertips along the floor, drawing invisible patterns in the dust. Auralite young do not choose the strongest or the most skilled. They choose familiarity, the presence that feels aligned with safety and calm. What it senses from you is something it is trying to return. Ethan's throat tightened. I do not know what I gave it. I was just a kid with a glowing rock. Naira offered a small, soft smile. Sometimes that is enough. Emotional echoes are powerful. They shape the young before they understand the world. Ethan exhaled slowly and looked down at the egg, now resting more confidently against his palms. The swirling light had taken on a softer rhythm, almost lulling. Naira watched closely. You should know, she whispered, that an early imprint like this is rare. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Rare how? Rare as in, it will depend on you when it hatches, she said gently. Not because of obligation, but because its entire sense of safety will center on your presence. Ethan felt the weight shift again, but the warmth grounded him. I can handle that, he said quietly. Naira looked at him for a long moment, her expression caught between relief and something more complicated. I am not sure you understand what you are agreeing to. Then explain it. Her voice softened, as if each word needed careful shaping. When it hatches, it will seek your heartbeat, your voice. It will not wander far. That connection shapes who it becomes. Ethan nodded. Sounds like trust. Naira hesitated, her eyes tracing his face as if studying the sincerity there. Yes, she said at last. But it is also responsibility. The egg pulsed, a gentle glow spilling across their joined space. Naira's voice dropped even softer. And it has never responded to anyone like this before. Ethan looked down at the warm sphere in his hands and felt the quiet truth of her words anchor itself in his chest. Then we take care of it, he said. Together. The egg glowed brighter, as if agreeing, and Naira's breath caught just enough for Ethan to hear. The glow in Ethan's hands had softened into a steady, peaceful rhythm when the shelter's lights flickered once, then again, dimming just enough to make the small room feel like it was holding its breath. Ethan's gaze lifted toward the ceiling. The generator's hum wavered, dropping half a pitch before steadying again. Naira straightened immediately, her posture tightening as she read the air the way someone reads a warning hidden inside a breeze. That is not the storm, she whispered. Ethan felt it too. The shift was subtle, a faint tremor moving through the floor like a slow exhale from something large outside. What was that? He asked. Naira moved closer, her eyes narrowing in concentration. Resonance interference. Something close by is emitting a strong field. Ethan frowned. Something natural? Naira shook her head. No. Something built. Ethan adjusted the egg carefully, feeling it respond with a tiny pulse as if sensing the same disturbance. What would cause that? She hesitated before answering. A tracking array. Ethan's breath slowed. Tracking what? Naira met his eyes, and he saw the truth long before she spoke it. The egg. The generator flickered again, the lights dimming into a softer glow that made every shadow stretch farther across the curved walls. Ethan instinctively brought the egg closer to his chest, shielding it without even thinking. Naira noticed, her expression tightening with something that was almost guilt. I hoped we had outrun them, she said softly. But the storm must have exposed our path. Ethan steadied his breathing, keeping his voice quiet so the egg would not sense his tension. Who are they? Naira took a slow breath, her hands curling slightly at her sides. Collectors, not hunters. They do not wish harm, but they believe Auralite young must be raised by their order for their abilities to develop properly. That does not sound dangerous, Ethan said carefully. Naira lowered her gaze. It is not, but it is permanent. Once they take the young, they do not return them. Ethan felt the weight of the egg shift, as if reacting to the quiet urgency building in the room. And you do not want that, he said. She shook her head. The young should choose their bond, not be assigned one. The air inside the shelter thickened, the hum of the generator smoothing out once the interference stopped. Naira stepped closer, her voice low, steady, threaded with something that sounded like resolve. If they come, they will want to take it from you. Not forcefully, but firmly. They believe humans are unstable bondholders. Ethan felt the egg pulse again, warm against his chest, a gentle reassurance that seemed to quiet the concern that tried to rise in him. Do you believe that? He asked. Naira's expression shifted, a small, quiet crack in her mask of calm. I have seen what the egg senses in you. Calm. Familiarity. Safety. Ethan nodded slowly. Then I will stay with it. As long as it needs. Naira's breath caught, but she said nothing, watching the glow ripple softly against his jacket. She reached out, pausing just before her fingers touched the shell resting against his hands. If they find us, she whispered, they will ask you to surrender it. They will not take your freedom, but they will take your bond. Ethan looked down at the egg, feeling its warmth pulse against his palms like a tiny heartbeat syncing with his own. Then we make sure they do not find us. Naira held his gaze for a long, quiet moment. Then she nodded once, the gesture small, but full of meaning. The egg glowed brighter between them, as if agreeing, its light spreading across the shelter walls in soft, determined waves. The shelter settled into a deeper hush, the kind that made every small sound expand gently through the warm air. Ethan held the egg. Close, its glow a steady heartbeat against his palms. The earlier tremor had faded, but the quiet it left behind had a different weight now, as if the room itself understood what Naira had revealed. She moved to the small observation slit near the door, the faintest draft brushing her hair as she tilted her head, listening. Her posture was calm, but Ethan could sense the tension woven beneath it, like a note held too long in a song. The interference stopped, she murmured. But that does not mean they are gone. Ethan shifted the egg carefully, letting it rest against his chest so he could stretch one hand and test the warmth of the metal wall. Still steady, still safe. Naira glanced back at him, her eyes catching the soft blue glow and reflecting it like mirrored water. You should know something else, she said quietly. Collectors track resonance patterns. Not footprints, not heat signatures, resonance. Anything the egg bonds with becomes a beacon. Ethan stilled. So you are saying I am a beacon now? Naira hesitated, then nodded. Yes, not bright yet. But if the connection deepens, it will be unmistakable. Ethan took the information in slowly, breathing through the weight of it. He glanced down at the egg, which pulsed once, gently, as if offering reassurance rather than apology. Then we stay ahead of them, he said, or we let the storm mask our signal. Naira stepped away from the wall and moved toward him, her movements quiet and precise, softened by the warm glow. The storm did hide us for a while, she agreed. But the worst of it is passing. Once the sky clears, they will have full range again. The egg hummed faintly, its surface shifting with tiny ripples of light. Ethan felt the warmth drift up his arms, the sensation soothing but purposeful, like the young inside was reaching out. Naira's gaze followed the glow. It is beginning to understand you, she whispered. This early? Ethan asked. Naira nodded. Oralite young learn quickly. Faster still when the imprint is strong. Ethan looked down at the small sphere nestled against him. How strong is this imprint going to get? Naira took a slow breath and folded her hands in front of her, choosing her words carefully. If it continues like this, it will see you not only as a presence of safety, but as the first sound it trusts, the first warmth it recognizes fully. That creates a permanent bond. Ethan exhaled, the air warming in front of him. Permanent, he repeated. Naira's voice softened, almost apologetic. It will not bind you physically, but emotionally. Oralite young stay connected to their imprint for years. It will need you the way some creatures need light or steady ground. Ethan felt the warmth in his chest deepen, not heavy but anchoring, as if the egg sensed his steady acceptance. I can be steady, he said quietly. Naira studied him with a fragile, searching calm. You do not even hesitate. Ethan shook his head gently. Something chose me without asking for anything in return. I do not run from that. The egg brightened at his words, its glow spreading across the shelter walls in soft, spiraling patterns. Naira watched the light ripple, her expression shifting from worry to something quieter, deeper, almost awed. It trusts you completely, she whispered. And I think, she added after a breath, I am beginning to understand why. The shelter lights dimmed one last time before settling into a calm glow, as if the entire structure had finally taken its first full breath since the storm began. Ethan stayed seated on the floor, the egg resting securely against his chest, its warm pulse steady and bright. Naira watched him in the quiet, her expression a mixture of wonder and resignation, as though she was seeing a truth she had always hoped for but never expected. The air felt warmer now, almost gentle, carrying none of the sharpness from earlier. Even the generator's hum softened, blending with the tiny rhythmic glow rising and falling beneath Ethan's hands. The storm has passed, Naira said softly, tilting her head toward the faint shift in the air pressure behind the shelter door. The sky is clearing. Ethan nodded, but he did not move to stand. His fingers rested lightly on the shell, tracing the soft swirls of light that rolled across its surface like calm tides. Then they will be able to track us again, he murmured. Naira hesitated. Yes, but the egg is close to hatching. Once it does, the resonance will change. It will be harder for the collectors to separate the imprint from the young. Ethan frowned gently. Will they harm it? No, Naira said quickly. They do not harm. They simply take. They believe the Oralite young must grow under their guidance. No personal bonds. No distractions. Ethan looked down at the egg again, sensing its warmth blooming stronger with every minute. But this one already has a bond, he whispered. Naira took a small step closer. Yes, a bond they will not understand. The room settled into a deep stillness, the kind that forms right before something new begins. Then, without warning, the egg brightened. Not harshly, not violently, but with a soft, swelling glow that filled the entire shelter like dawn stretching gently across the horizon. Ethan held his breath. Naira's eyes widened, her hands rising instinctively though she did not touch. The glow shifted from blue to a tender gold, warming their faces with a calm, living light. The soft pulses grew quicker, not frantic, but purposeful, like someone waking from a long sleep. It is time, Naira whispered, her voice trembling with awe. The shell warmed under Ethan's palms, humming with a resonance that felt familiar, like a memory he had forgotten but somehow still recognized. The glow concentrated at the center, forming a soft oval of pure light. Ethan felt a gentle pressure through his chest, not physical, more like a thought brushing against a thought. A quiet presence. A recognition. Naira watched him instead of the egg, her breath catching as she saw the subtle shift in his expression. It is speaking to you, she murmured. Ethan swallowed, the warmth inside the shell blooming wider. Not words, he said softly. Just knowing. The glow expanded until the whole shelter seemed to breathe with it. Then, as suddenly as it swelled, the lights softened, settling into a warm halo around the small shape beginning to form inside the shell. Ethan held it steady, his hands firm but gentle. Naira knelt beside him, her shoulder barely touching his, close enough to share the moment, far enough to let him lead. The tiny silhouette curled within the glow shifted with slow, delicate motion. A soft, soundless ripple passed through the air. Naira's eyes glistened. It knows you, she whispered. It chose you. The light dimmed into a soothing glow, as if the young inside had fallen into a peaceful, trusting rest. Ethan exhaled slowly, feeling something settle deep in his chest, quiet and certain. The storm had ended. The world outside waited. But in the warm stillness of the shelter, with Naira at his side and the Oralite young resting safely against his heart, Ethan understood the truth completely. He had not been chosen because he was strong or extraordinary. He had been chosen because he was steady, and sometimes that was enough for a life to begin.